at a price that is immediately affordable and with the ability to be tuned up to amazing performance at any time. The Grasshopper fits every requirement for the ideal buggy. Speed, performance, good looks, and easy maintenance. A 3-step forward and reverse speed controller and a heavy-duty competition differential in a sealed gearbox.
Hi guys, welcome to my channel. This is my very first video, and I'm just going to be creating a few videos, my upgrade paths on the Tamiya Grasshopper, and hoping some of you will tag along. So this is my re-release of the Tamiya Grasshopper. It's not an original. When I was a kid, I wanted original. But I was a little bit younger, and my parents definitely were not willing to fork over the couple $100 or a few $100s at the time that it would have cost to get the entire setup going. So, understandably, I usually receive the cheaper Nico and Tyco variants that you'd see from Toys R Us and so on. All great fun, but definitely not in the same realm as something like this or some of the other Tamiya cars that I'm going to be covering on the channel as well. So first, I just wanted to talk about the car itself, my build. I just finished it last week. I went with the box art. There's a couple of different changes that I had to make in order to make the modifications that I made so far. But other than that, the the shell itself is very much just box art. I ended up painting the shell titanium white, 3 coats, and sanding it, and then adding all of the decals. And I used a wet method. That was my first time ever actually doing the wet method, and I think it came out great. Super happy. It was easier, much easier, I would say. So maybe I'll do a video on that actually, because like I said, it was my first time, and I was definitely a little bit nervous, but it went much smoother. So I'll definitely give you some advice on a couple of tips, maybe to avoid the mistakes I made or could have made. But no, it went very smoothly, and really happy with your overall build. As far as painting, I did end up painting a few of the parts that I think, depending on different varying opinions, people will say that the entire components of the suspension are all black. And while that may be the case on the box itself, it does kind of look gold. So I ended up actually painting them gold, just to be a little bit different from the rest of the components on the car as well. But I will be upgrading those to different pieces in the future, so that will probably change also. So on the car, as far as modifications that I've made so far, on the build, I ended up using fast eddies bearings throughout, so on the wheels, and then also in the gearbox. So definitely made a huge difference. From what I hear, not only in just drivability of the car and smoothness of driving, and also length of battery life, just the list goes on. So it's a kind of a no-brainer. I think the whole kit ended up costing me $20, not even, I think it was $16 for all of the bearings. So kind of a no-brainer. So that was the first upgrade. The second upgrade, which I'm going to show you today, and then I'll talk about my third upgrade. So the second upgrade was the CVA shocks. So these are the Tamiya CVA short shock unit set 2. So this is part number is 50520, for anyone that is wondering, the actual Tamiya part. That is it. And on the back here of the card, you'll see it kind of shows different sizes. So it's actually, the shock is for numerous different builds depending on the sizes that you choose. So it's actually, it can vary quite a bit in size, anywhere from 80 to 94 mil. So for the Grasshopper, you're going to be using 80 mil. And as far as the different dampening settings, you can choose whatever you like. I end up using the middle dampening setting, which is, if you look at the little plunger piece that's in there. So this is the piece that goes inside the shock that allows the oil to flow back and forth. So obviously having less holes would make it stiffer and more holes softer. So I ended up going with the middle one, and we're going to see how that goes. And then of course the different springs. So this is the stiff spring. I ended up putting these soft springs in there, and so far I do like it. I think it's a pretty good setup. I'm going to drive the car outside and kind of give it a run through its paces before I finally decide on where I leave it, but I think I like it where it is right now. So these are, as you probably have seen, the stock shocks. So they're just kind of a plunger style, spring-loaded, and not horrible, but definitely not anywhere close to what a fully dampened oil unit can offer. So that's kind of the primary reason I went with that. I wasn't able to find any Hornet shocks, so that was kind of what I was after initially, and I couldn't really find any, so I started doing a little research on different sizes and so on. So there are a couple of different modifications that you do need to make on the car. So I'll show you what those are, both on the car itself and then on the shell. So first on the shell, I'll show you very quickly kind of what you have to do. On the back of it here, you'll notice that there's little cutouts. It's right after the spring, or sorry, the screw hole here that it gives you. And you just have to cut out, to be honest with you, probably cut out too much. I didn't have to take out that much. It's mostly the front section here. And I'll show you on the car why you have to do it. But it's just for the top of the shock mount, because they're so much larger than the stock ones. You have to give it clearance in order for the body shell to fit. The other option that you could do, and I didn't feel like exploring, would be to put some type of extension piece where your screws go in for the body. You could put an extension there in order to lift up the body, but then of course that's going to lift the body even further up in the back end. So it's really personal preference. I decided to just take out that small piece. I just used a very fine blade, and then I sanded it with 1000 grit and 2000 grit, and I'll repaint that little section too. So it is symmetrical, so you can barely tell, to be honest with you. Unless you're really looking, it's pretty hard to tell. So that's all you have to do on the body. And then as far as the car on the back, you'll notice that when I push this down, it's pretty close to the gearbox on the left side here. And that's exactly where you have to kind of finesse a knife down in there. And I ended up actually just removing the shock again, and then just using a knife and carving down and shaving and shaving. And I took, to be honest, I'm not sure measurement wise, but I took off a couple millimeters just to the point where I got clearance perfectly. And once I was able to get clearance without any rubbing, I just put the shock back on and was good to go. On the bottom too, the ribs, they're on the outside here. Sometimes, depending on the angle, you may have to shave it just a little bit, but I personally didn't have to. I think mine got clearance, no issue there, but it's definitely much better as far as dampening is concerned. So I'm definitely looking forward to driving that outside. I've only tried it indoors on the carpet, but it does definitely seem to like pick up better. I don't know if it's placebo, but it definitely feels quicker off the line. So as far as my car goes and spec-wise inside, I ended up going with just a 7.2 NIM for the battery. And then for the radio and receiver, or sorry, the transmitter receiver, it is the FlySky. Uses the FSA3 for the radio, and the transmitter is the FSIT3C, which I think is the same as the GT, but a couple of different changes there. And has the Tamiya speed controller in there, and that does work with both brushed and brushless. So I will probably eventually explore a brushless motor in here, and probably 2S. But for now, I'll stick with a 7.2 NIM and have some fun that way. So that's pretty much it. If anyone has ever built the Tamiya shocks before, pretty straightforward. The directions that everything comes with from Tamiya is always quite good. Very detailed. You could probably just go off the images, to be honest with you. Very, very straightforward though. And it shows you the different spacers that you need based on the vehicle and the size down here. So based on 80 mil, essentially all I had to do was then choose X3, and that is the 7mm spacer, and it says right there 7mm. So that goes inside the actual dampener, and that keeps it from obviously going too far. So you do need to select the right size, but it comes with everything, and there's nothing that I had to buy at all. So do I think it's worth it? Definitely. I think it's a great upgrade. I ended up finding mine on Amazon. I know there's lots of different places that have them available, but the fronts are something that I'm going to look into. I've tried to source something that was 10th size that would fit in the front, and to be honest with you, most of them are too large, I think. So what I ended up doing is just getting a 16th scale shock, and I'm just going to use another U-mount on the top, and I'm just going to put those in there. So I eventually will go to a double wishbone front, but for now, just going to do the front shocks and the motor, and then we'll have some fun that way, and we'll go from there. So if anyone has any suggestions on what they think I should do after that, definitely let me know. Any questions about the shocks or the build itself, feel free to ask, and hope you see you in the next one, guys. Cheers.